I met Sarah when I was 25 at a mutual friend's wedding. It was a day marked by celebration and joy, and the chance encounter that brought Sarah and me together seemed almost serendipitous. She was a close friend of the bride, and I was there as the groom's friend. It was one of those events where seating arrangements are carefully planned to spark connections, and in this case, it worked beautifully. As soon as I saw Sarah, I was struck by her beauty. There was something magnetic about her presence. We were seated at the same table, and as the evening progressed, we struck up a conversation. From the start, it was clear that we had a lot in common. We talked about our interests, our dreams, and our lives. It felt like we had known each other for years, even though we had just met. Our conversation flowed naturally, and as the night went on, we found ourselves on the dance floor. We danced and drank, lost in the moment. The music, the atmosphere, and the connection we shared led to a kiss in the middle of the dance floor, a spontaneous, exhilarating experience. When the night ended, we parted ways without exchanging numbers. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 weeks later, I received a text from Sarah asking me out. I was thrilled and, of course, said yes. Our first date was as wonderful as that wedding night. What began as a casual meeting soon turned into a serious relationship. Over the next 3 years, our connection deepened. We faced challenges, but we always managed to work through them with ease. Our bond grew stronger, and eventually I proposed. 6 months later, we were married. The first 2 years of our marriage were filled with happiness and contentment. We had our share of minor disagreements, but nothing that couldn't be resolved. We were in love, and our life together seemed perfect. However, as we approached our second anniversary, things began to shift. It started with small changes. Sarah became more protective of her phone, her girls' nights became more frequent, and our once active sex life dwindled to almost nothing. I brought up my concerns multiple times, only to be dismissed as insecure. Sarah would brush off my worries, insisting that I was letting my insecurities get the better of me. Her dismissive attitude began to wear on me. I felt like I was speaking into a void, and as a result, I became increasingly distant. I stopped giving her goodbye kisses and engaged in minimal conversation. The warmth that once defined our relationship was replaced by a cold silence. One night, while Sarah slept, I decided to investigate further. I took her phone and laptop, but found nothing of concern. Desperate for answers, I searched her car and discovered a hidden second phone. My heart sank as I realized what this meant. I spent the entire night going through the phone's contents. I meticulously printed out every message and photo, determined to have solid evidence before confronting her. I also began researching divorce lawyers, trying to prepare myself for the inevitable. As I reviewed the evidence, I noticed that the phone was connected to someone named Christopher, a name I recognized from social gatherings. The betrayal was even more painful because Christopher was someone I had considered a friend, albeit not a close one. The realization hit me hard, and I felt a surge of anger. I spent the night in a whirlwind of emotions, shock, betrayal, and a deep, seething rage. The next day, I called a friend and asked him to join me for a drink. He could tell something was seriously wrong from the tone of my voice. When I told him about Sarah's infidelity, he was sympathetic but also visibly troubled. He was the one who had introduced me to Christopher, and the revelation seemed to hit him hard. I asked him not to share this with anyone yet, as I needed time to process and decide my next steps. We spent the night drinking and talking, and when I finally returned home, I was emotionally exhausted. Sarah was waiting for me, her messages and missed calls indicating her concern. She had fallen asleep on the couch, and when I arrived home, I chose to ignore her and went straight to bed. The next morning, she was in our bed, and when I woke up, I left the houses without a word. I buried myself in work, trying to escape the emotional turmoil. That night, Sarah made an effort to make things right by preparing dinner, but I was in no mood to engage. I declined her offer and went to bed early. The following day, I met with a divorce lawyer. I presented all the evidence I had gathered, and he reviewed it thoroughly. He assured me that, because we lived in an at-fault state, Sarah would have little claim on our assets. I was relieved to hear this, but my primary concern was ending the relationship as quickly as possible. The lawyer agreed to keep the evidence and make copies for future reference, while I decided to keep the original documents to avoid any excuses from Sarah. When I returned home, Sarah was not there. I texted her, demanding she come home immediately. Her response was a call within minutes, feigning ignorance. When she arrived, I confronted her with the evidence. Her initial reaction was one of shock and denial. She tried to gaslight me, claiming that I was misinterpreting things, but I was resolute. The confrontation escalated as Sarah became defensive and started insulting me. I slammed my fist on the table, wanting her to understand the gravity of the situation. I laid out the evidence, showing her the printed messages and photos. Her demeanor shifted from anger to desperation as she tried to apologize and express her love. I was unmoved by her pleas. The pain and betrayal were too deep for any reconciliation. Sarah attempted to embrace me, but I pulled away. I told her that I would never touch her again and that I had already contacted a lawyer. I ordered her to pack her belongings and leave. The finality of my words seemed to hit her hard. She gathered her things and left the house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That was 6 days ago. Since then, I have not heard from Sarah. The silence is both a comfort and a reminder of the heartbreak. I am beginning to rebuild my life, but the scars of betrayal linger. The love that once brought me so much joy is now overshadowed by the harsh reality of deceit. It's a painful chapter, but I am determined to move forward and find peace.